Hey guys, welcome to another shared news from home. We are live today to talk all things The Bachelor. As always, I am your host, Fiona Zaring, and I'm joined by the wonderful Hibba Berry. Hibba, there is so much happening in Bachelor Nation today. I say we dive right in because obviously, hello, we have to talk about Colton sharing his truth and coming out as gay on Good Morning America. He held absolutely nothing back, opened up about the journey he's been on to get to where he is today. Honestly, let's just kick it off by taking a quick look at the interview.
And for me, I've ran from myself for a long time. I've hated myself for a long time, and I'm gay.
So honestly, this moment, I have to say, when I watched this morning, I just got chills. He takes a deep breath, he lays it all out there. What was your initial reaction to this moment, Hiba?
I kind of have to admit I saw this coming because there was a lot of rumors that were swirling on Twitter prior to this interview airing saying that he might be coming out. This might be, his big announcement to everyone. And he did it in a very public way, of course. So I wasn't super surprised about the reveal, but as you can see, his nonverbals, he seems so relieved to finally say those words. And yes, they're just words to us, but it's so much easier to just judge from the outside, but not really know what the journey has been like for him. So, again, he seems very relieved and to finally, just have that out on the table and publicized. So, yeah, it was really a powerful moment.
Yeah, absolutely. You said it when he kind of reveals the news, says it out loud to the world. You can sort of sense a weight is lifted. Obviously, this has been a lifelong journey for him, and just probably the anticipation of saying this out loud to the world, I cannot even imagine. He talked about, of course, how this is an emotional experience, but that they are happy emotions, that he feels, overjoyed. Let's take a look at him sort of explaining how he's doing, how he's feeling now that this is just out.
Through the nerves, I can see the joy. I can
Yeah.
see the relief.
I'm emotional, but I'm emotional in such a good, happy, positive way. I'm the happiest and healthiest I've ever been in my life.
So here's the thing. It was not an easy road, right? He really does go in depth in the interview as to how dark this, journey of sort of self discovery, coming to terms with who he is, was for him. And just as someone who obviously is a fan of Bachelor Nation, pays attention to Bachelor Nation, there have been rumors, there have been questions. This has been sort of an ongoing public journey for him as well. This isn't something he just battled privately. This is something that, as he was battling privately, obviously he was aware of conversations happening out in the world. So it just feels like for him to come to where he is now, we can't you can't not acknowledge, I guess, the process, right? It feels like it was not just a decision he came to. He's on Good Morning America. Okay, the mental building blocks to get to where he is as a person, and then to get to sharing it publicly and addressing all of those people. It's a long process.
Certainly, and I like how he said that he's finally healthy now, and I'm assuming in terms of mental health, he's finally healthy. He's kind of come into his own and is finally embracing who he truly is. And being a public person, we don't really get to see the progress that it takes because, of course, that happens behind closed doors where we're not really invited to see that process. So we usually just get the end result, which is what we saw today in this interview. But I'm sure it took a lot of, therapy, a lot of, self-realization and self-reflection. So this isn't something that just happened overnight, like you mentioned. This has been ongoing for years. So, again, you can just see the relief on his face. He's done something that's so brave and so vulnerable as well, because it's hard enough to come out in general, but to do it on a public platform where there's Twitter and social media and everything, like everyone has a comment nowadays. So I give big props to him because, again, it's not easy in general.
No, it's certainly not. And I think as someone who, I mean, obviously we'll get to this. We know Colton because he was the Bachelor, right? The world was introduced to him through a television show where he was on the search for a wife, right? So I feel like that adds a layer of public scrutiny that would have made this moment daunting for a lot of people. But you can tell, obviously, he really does seem so happy. You said it, a weight lifted, just a full new chapter for him to embark on at this point. But nonetheless, all things considered, I really do feel like this was fairly shocking news. We haven't heard from Colton for a while. We got that teaser from Good Morning America last night, and I feel like I just kept wondering, what is it going to be? What's coming next? What is it going to be? So big moment for Bachelor Nation. Obviously, you guys, we want to know what you guys thought of this interview. Did you tune in live? Were you, anticipating this after they released the teaser? What do you think? Let us know in the chat and send us any questions, comments you have, because at the end of this stream, we're going to try to get to as many of those as we possibly can. Also, you guys, if you are joining us live for the very first time, make sure you go ahead, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, because we are going to be going live as much as we possibly need to, I guess is the best way to put it, to keep you updated on all things Bachelor Nation. There is always news. There is always so much to talk about. So make sure you ring that bell so you're notified and you don't miss out on any future live streams. All right, with that said, Hibba, we do have to talk about, and he obviously had to talk about, that elephant in the room, which is the fact that he was the Bachelor, right? He has a history with the franchise, and we all met him, like I said, as someone on a very different journey in love. Not better, wrong, right, but we just met him differently than this. And he explained that he does have some regrets going on a show and putting himself through that journey at the time. He said, "Do I regret being the Bachelor? And do I regret handling it the way I did? I do. I do think I could have handled it better. I'll say that." So definitely an interesting moment in his life. He had a message for the women of his season that I actually thought was really interesting. Let's take a look.
But I also, at the same time, but I can sit here and say I'm sorry to all of those women. I can also say thank you, because without them and without the Bachelor franchise, I don't know if this would have ever came out.
So, Hibba, what really strikes me is, obviously, we now know, because he so bravely, talked about his journey, talked about how it was a process for him to get to accepting who he is and loving himself and all of that. When he went on this show, what he was looking for, the place of his life that he was at the time, it's just a completely different person. And I love that he not only apologized to the women, but thanked them, because at the end of the day, this was a bit of a journey of self-discovery, of self-acceptance, of self-love, and they all helped him, truly at the end of the day, get to this place. So I just thought that apology and thanking at the same time, there was really something about that stood out to me. I don't know how to put my finger on it, but what did you make of it, Hibba?
I thought it was really vulnerable that he apologized and, like you said, thanked them as well in the same sentence. And really, he probably wouldn't have realized this whether it had not been, if he didn't go through the Bachelor process and he had become the Bachelor. So, I mean, I'm sure he had, conversations with himself and realizations during that season, and maybe things didn't feel right, and that led him to kind of self-reflect, maybe, think deeper into what he actually is looking for and what feels right. And I mean, I can't really speak on this topic a lot because, this is his journey. We don't really know exactly what he went through in detail. But I mean, it seems like he's in a better place right now. And again, you can see it on his face. He just seems so relieved. You could just see him being kind of just able to breathe a little bit easier after he, announced that. And so, I mean, it just seems like he wouldn't have again realized this, or wouldn't have been any easier had he not gone through the Bachelor experience and met all those women. And I just really hope that he also specializes an apology specifically for Cassie, because I mean, they had a roller coaster of a relationship, and it seemed like there was mostly damage between them. I mean, we saw how the relationship unfolded and what had happened. So I really hope that
Mhm.
they have some sort of conversation, whether it's public or not, on the side, and there's some civil it's just kind of more civil between them, because I know right now a lot of people are taking sides of whether or not this is genuine, that this apology that he gave to Cassie, or if he needed to do more. But again, we'll just have to keep watching and see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we'll definitely have to get into the Cassie of it all, but you raise a good point. Like, there's nothing more beautiful than someone accepting themselves for who they are. I mean, I'm so happy for him, proud of him. I think a lot of people out there are going to be inspired by this. I hope a lot of people out there are empowered by this. It is never too late, no matter what you've put out there publicly, that you should be who you authentically are, right? This moment, this journey he's gone on to find himself, to be where he is now, is commendable and, wonderful and all the things. But Cassie and him had a very public life. And we have talked about on this channel, feels like it was just yesterday, the, major headlines that were made as their relationship sort of ended. The restraining order that was filed, the allegations, those were very serious. And what we saw addressed on Good Morning America, he did apologize to her briefly, but it was vague, right? This wasn't the conversation where he was going to address all of those allegations, go into the weeds there, and really explain that moment in his life. This is about his journey to finding himself, accepting himself. That is a completely different interview. So he did, of course, address briefly this with Cassie, which we're going to play that clip so we can get into it, Hibba. But I do agree with you. I think and I hope that behind the scenes, after everything they've been through, like you said, whether it's privately, whether they loop us in, there's some real healing there, because just what the public is aware of, at least, it calls for some healing, right? But let's look at what he did say about Cassie on Good Morning America.
I would just say that I'm sorry from the bottom of my heart. I'm sorry for any pain and emotional stress I caused. I wish it wouldn't have happened the way it did.
So, to me, those are some statements that I think, and I can only assume, right? I'm not Cassie, but probably she and him are reading between the lines a little bit more there, right? I feel like in his head, as he's saying those sort of vaguer, broader apologies, he's apologizing for more specific things. And I think he's hoping that if she's watching this, she knows that he's apologizing for deeper things. But I really hope, for the sake of healing, for the sake of turning the page, for the sake of moving on, that there is a deeper conversation, because we do know that there is some deep hurt there. As of right now, as of we've gone live, I refreshed literally right before we started. Cassie hasn't said anything yet. I have to imagine she's taking some time to take this news in, to process it. We don't even know if she'll ever say anything, right? I mean, she of all people probably has the most to really unpack from this news. But I do think that it was important, at the very least, that he publicly apologized to her in some way, right? Because as fans, we're all very aware of what their journey has been.
Definitely. And to be quite honest, when I was just watching that clip, that apology just didn't seem very genuine. You can kind of see he was like smirking a little bit, and I don't know, I just kind of felt it rubbed me the wrong way. That apology just didn't seem genuine. It was way too vague. I mean, that relationship had trauma, it had trackers, it had a lot of, toxic behavior, harassment, everything involved. So I really do wish that they have some type of conversation between them two, whether it's public or private, where they really kind of delve into this. And again, it gives no justification of his behavior from him coming out. I mean, that does not justify the way that he treated her, the way the relationship played out. But yeah, I just think that specific apology in that clip right there just did not seem genuine. It just seemed like, oh, I'll just, toss her a bone here just because, I know this question is going to come up, but I'm not going to go too much into it or disclose too much. But
Mhm.
it didn't seem genuine to me at all. It was weird. It was like a weird moment in the interview, I think. I don't know if that's just me.
No, I do. I get what you're saying because honestly, it feels like, and this is sort of maybe just how I processed the interview watching it, but I'm curious if other people out there felt the same kind of energy. Almost two different things, right? Like to see someone who's been a public figure for so long, who's, been scrutinized over his sexual identity, who clearly, he opened up about it here, like has really struggled with it, gone through a private, really intense battle to get to where he is. That's a wonderful, inspirational, powerful story. I couldn't be happier for him. And I really, like I said before, I hope that this inspires more people out there who need to hear someone, talk about what it took for them and, just encourage other people out there. You're going to get through it at the end, believe he was asked what advice he would give himself in the past. And I'm paraphrasing, but it was something simply along the lines of, you're going to get through this. There's so much to be commended in that journey. And I literally, I was really inspired by it. I thought it was really strong. But you can't completely erase what Cassie went through, what happened,
Hmm.
and what we as fans are also invested in, which is sort of the fallout of that relationship. And I do think that the only fair course of action here is to, I'd love to give them both the benefit of the doubt. Conversations, healing, all of that is happening, but we of course don't know. So I think the questions of, okay, I'm a fan watching this, you're not really explaining what went wrong with Cassie, and we read and we're shocked by actions like putting a tracker on her car, right? So it's like you almost separate them because you can be really happy and proud and impressed and inspired, but you just want to make sure that we don't, ignore that other piece. And so I'm just hopeful at
Exactly.
this point. I'm giving it sort of the benefit of the doubt that hopefully it sounds like he's gone through a really big process of self-discovery, of healing, of finding, self-love, getting to a good chapter, a good place in his life, acknowledging that there was hurt that was caused in the past. And if he
Hmm.
doesn't want to get into all of that publicly right now for me to consume, okay, I just hope that it's gotten into it somewhere, right? Behind the scenes, there's been some healing that's been done. Because I'm with you, Hiba. It really feels like, at the very least, Cassie is owed that. Maybe this
Yeah.
is, a behind closed door situation. It's not my business, right? Maybe
Mhm.
I'm never gonna get it, but Cassie, I hope, does. So very interesting if there is anything in the future to kind of update our fans on between the two of them, whether it's Cassie making a statement or Colton sort of at another time, maybe not in this initial interview, but in a separate one, elaborating on the work he did to mend that, fence, to apologize for those actions. We'll
Mhm.
obviously want to keep you all posted so we can discuss it as well, because it's definitely something that I think has been on a lot of people's minds today as this news came out. But circling back to sort of the broader themes of the interview, he's found himself starting a new chapter. He did also explain what he's looking for next and how far along in this journey he is, what he's looking for relationship wise and how he's sort of feeling excited as to what's to come. So let's roll that clip too.
I'll just go on record saying I still haven't had an emotional connection with a man. I've never allowed myself to, and it's never been sort of in my cards to let myself get there, and I want to more than anything, and I'm looking for someone who can push me and challenge me in all the great ways.
So, like I said, we are at the beginning of his journey, and I think that, this is going to be a completely new Colton. How much of these next steps of his journey we hear about, I don't know. I mean, it's really interesting. I think that he's putting it truly all out there, all things considered. So where we go from here will be definitely interesting.
Yeah, and again, another vulnerable part that he mentioned in the interview. And it's a little bit more understandable with why he hasn't had a relationship with a person yet, because I mean he just came to terms with his true identity and who he is, and before, when that's not even established, you can't even think about relationships and exploring that. You first have to be kind of solidified with yourself and who you are, and then you can kind of, go into those next steps of looking for a relationship or for the perfect person in your life. So I think, now that that has been established, that's going to kind of be like the next step in his journey, is to, go out and start dating and things like that, and having these conversations and being a part of that community now. So I think, good on him. He's finally able to vocalize these types of things, which I'm sure were very difficult for him to do in the past. But it just takes steps, and it takes, being vulnerable and just like wearing it all out on your sleeve, and just being honest with yourself at this point as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, I mean, there are so many members of Bachelor Nation that whenever something really major happens in Bachelor Nation, we're going to hear, reactions, words of support from fellow members. And there are two people in particular that kind of stood out to me as I was sifting through like Bachelor Nation reactions and what people have had to say. That would be Hannah G and Tayshia, because of course they were, dual runner-ups on his season. That's something I feel like I've actually almost forgotten until I was reading earlier today, because we're just like, Tayshia's Tayshia at this point, but they were introduced to all of us through Colton's season. And Hannah G told TMZ, I support Colton for having the courage to finally be able to live his life authentically. Nobody should have to hide from who they really are. She added that she'll always wish Colton the very best and is hoping he has found his peace. Tayshia had a very similar sentiment. A rep for her said she's very happy that Colton's able to now live his life openly and without fear of being his true self, adding there is absolutely no ill will, only support, his willingness to share his truth, and the additional representation for the LGBTQ community. So given the fact that, they were runner-ups, right? They are two women he pursued relationships with. I have to say, I feel like, as he's reading these things, as he's hearing, support from people, it probably meant a lot to hear it, because they are two of those women, like we discussed earlier, that he not only apologized, but thanked, because they were a part of his journey.
Yeah, and it just means even more because they again were part of his season, and these girls could have easily, not even commented or kind of, taken it personally, like, oh, like he wasted my time, like he wasn't even like secure with himself or, what he wanted, like why was he even the lead. But I think, what, it's so much easier said than done to accept yourself. And I think, now he's kind of come to his own, and again, he knows what he wants, and he's at peace with himself and who he truly is authentically. And I mean, it's hard to not support that, because we're all about that in this day and age, is you being your authentic self. And so when it's finally time for a person to realize that and embrace it, it should always be celebrated. And yeah, again, it was just great to hear from these two girls, because they've gone on to, be such big figures in Bachelor Nation and the franchise. So again, they're kind of like leading by example and then just offering their support to him.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, the franchise itself, the Bachelor producers released a statement, which I thought was really interesting. They posted, we are so inspired by his courage. They added that they are firm believers in the power of love, and that they're going to celebrate his journey in the LGBTQ community every step of the way, which I thought was really great, right? Because producers are someone that we don't hear from them a lot. They're kind of the puppets behind the scenes, but for them to come out and put that forward publicly, I'm sure meant a lot. Speaking of the producers, Chris Harrison, who of course, face of the franchise, but also is a producer on the show, he has been, as we have talked about at length, sort of going through his own moment of silence on social media, and he actually returned. He has not posted since all of the Rachael Kirconnell, extra interview, taking a break, fallout. He's been very quiet on his socials, but he decided to take this opportunity to publicly reach out to Colton. He posted on his Instagram saying, "Very proud of you today, Colton Underwood. Happy to see you stand up and openly live your truth. You have my love and support, my friend." So some kind words from Chris there. We also, we saw a lot of varying, tweets, social media comments, Instagrams, you name it, from lots of members. Demi Burnett tweeted, "Welcome to the community, brother." Emily and Haley Ferguson said in a statement that they are so proud of him for being brave and sharing amazing news. They commended his courage to be his true self, obviously said that they wish him the best and will support him, but they threw out an interesting suggestion that has been surfacing a little bit more and more on social media. They wrote, "We hope that the franchise will give him the opportunity to be the Bachelor again when he's ready, because we would love to watch his new journey of finding love." So it's great to see members of Bachelor Nation, coming forward, supporting someone, in their journey of love, wherever that may take them. I do think that that is an interesting, I want to circle back to that, having him as the Bachelor again, because I have to say, they're not the only two people who had this thought. It was kind of all over the place. You saw varying levels of comments, different ideas here, there, wherever, but that was a sort of prevalent one, was, all right, well, maybe this is an opportunity for the show to make some progress and show us a completely different type of love story. I don't know that it would stick to the original format. We've seen so many different versions of Bachelor shows and spin-offs is, I guess, the word I'm looking for, but I don't know. Who knows if he would even be interested in something like that? He's spoken out in different varying levels of tone on his experience on the show, but it's a crazy idea. What do you think, Hiba?
Yeah, I feel like this was an inevitable comment for people to, try to get this type of lead for the show. And I think he wouldn't be prepared for this because I feel like it was such an emotional roller coaster. And maybe he just wants to do it on his time, do it at his pace instead of, being launched on another reality show like he previously did. And I think it's just better for him to take it at his pace, do it, not in the public eye, because there was just so much, stress and self-realization that he had to go through in the public eye. So hopefully now he can live just a little bit more privately or date privately, whatever, he decides to do. But maybe we can get a different lead if that logistically can work, because I feel like when it comes to this type of lead, it would be hard logistically to figure that out, because couldn't the contestants, like we mentioned, like fall in love with each other and totally forget about the lead? Like, I feel like it just wouldn't work unless we have some sort of like Bachelor in Paradise situation where everyone can just like intermingle and then just be there as a group in a group setting versus just one solid lead. Because again, I feel like the attention can be taken away so easily.
Yeah, I would love to see the franchise dive into, showing all types of love stories, right? So I think that hopefully, as we're all calling for some progress in the franchise, the creative minds can get to work and come up with a way to sort of, like I said, meet the moment. There's all sorts of different types of love out there. It's all beautiful. We could celebrate all sorts of love stories within this franchise, and right now we're just not. So it could be a really, really great step for the franchise to take. I think as we continue sort of opening our eyes as to what the future of this show could be, the possibilities are really endless. So hopefully the people behind the scenes are really like ready, to meet the moment and to change, because this show has been on for such a long time. There's no limit to what it could evolve into, which is interesting, of course. But we actually, speaking of shows and whatnot, we have to move on from the Good Morning America news, because there is some more Colton news. And while it is not he is going to be the Bachelor again and find love in a reality competition, It is looking like he's going to be returning to reality TV in some way. It's being reported by sources that he's currently working on a new reality show for Netflix. The sources are saying that the project is currently in production, so that they're working on it. You know, they're shooting it now, they're editing it now. It's not going to be coming out next week, right? But it's happening. Numerous sources told Variety that the project is described as focusing on Colton living his life publicly as a gay man. So, like I said, this show isn't coming out next week. He just came out publicly right now, so it feels like they're going to be, you know, working on production for the next, you know, give or take few months. Netflix, though, right? This is all rumored to be happening at Netflix. Netflix has declined to comment on the project. So they're keeping it hush-hush right now. We don't know too many details, but it seems like there are some very reliable sources saying that this is happening. An insider told Variety that Olympian Gus Kenworthy will appear in the series. He's going to be acting as a guide of sorts for Colton. So really interesting, given the fact that we don't super know the premise yet, to hear a big name like that will be involved. Like I said, we don't know when it's going to be launching, but this sounds really interesting because Hiba, I mean, what you were just saying about like him embarking on a whole new chapter, a whole new journey, maybe just wanting it to be for him at his own pace, behind closed doors, privately. Of course, we don't know what this show is going to be about yet. I highly doubt that it's some sort of Netflix dating competition, right? That doesn't feel like the right fit here based on even just the little amount of information we have. But it seems like at least part of this journey is going to be public, which is interesting. I mean, what do you think?
That is interesting to me and a little disappointing because I feel like when people make this announcement, they have this self-realization as far as, coming out. I feel like it's so easy to get a show and then just to make money off of it, and that just does not seem very genuine to me. I feel like it would have been better if he just appeared on an episode of Queer Eye or something. Like that would have been so much more fun, and just like a one episode, have him be comfortable in this new community, in this new space in his life. But when it comes to a show and like booking and like signing with a streaming service, it just really rubs me the wrong way again, as far as like, what are you really trying to get out of this? And I know he's trying to be genuine with his self journey and everything like that, like we discussed. But once there's a TV deal or some type of show involved, like I just get completely turned off, and I don't really see, it doesn't really seem just genuine to me. I don't know.
No, you raised a good point. I think this is going to sit very differently with a lot of people, especially until more details are out there. The highest hopes I would have would be that this is something he's taking on because he's gone through such a specific journey to get to where he is. Like, obviously, he grew up playing sports. He grew up, really with a lot of self-loathing. And I'm sure there are so many people out there who, it's so heartbreaking to say, can relate to that. So the glass half full of this, right, would be that there is an even deeper story to tell there that could inspire people, right? Really raise awareness. Maybe he's bringing, like, if we actually do end up having Gus Kenworthy on with him, maybe bringing together a lot of people to share a lot of stories, to do some good in the world, which, feels kind of like a Netflix thing, right? We see a lot of like Netflix putting some really interesting docu-style series out there. But it is interesting, Hiba. I think it's going to really come down to that gut feeling when we see the trailer, when we hear the interviews, when we get more details, because you're totally, listen, all opinions are like valid and people are going to have thoughts on this no matter what. So it's going to be interesting for sure. You guys, we want to know, are you excited? Are you confused? Do you think you'll watch? Like how does this sit with you guys? Even in these early stages where we don't have details yet, let us know in the chat, because who knows how long it'll be before we like really get some concrete idea of what this show is going to be. So it's going to be interesting. All right, you guys, we could talk about Colton for this whole live, because like I said, there is truly so much to this, so many angles, so many conversations happening in Bachelor Nation right now. But We do have, believe it or not, more Bachelor Nation news that isn't related to Colton that has come out. So we're going to pivot now. We'll talk about Colton at the end, I'm sure, as well, because obviously, like I said, send us your questions, your comments in the chat. But for now, we're going to update you guys on Rachael Kirconnell and Matt James. There has, of course, been a lot of drama, a lot of rumors over the past few weeks since they were spotted reunited in New York City. Obviously, we've had a lot of questions, right? That reunion, the woman Grace, who talked to Reality Steve, some eyebrows have been raised. We've been a little confused. And I think the big question was just, where do we go from here? What's happening next? And now a source has come forward to tell E! News that they are officially closing that chapter in their lives. The source said, quote, Rachael and Matt are no longer speaking, and Rachael is really upset about the situation that happened. She is devastated. She feels totally played by Matt. Rachael really trusted that they could have a future together and is heartbroken. According to the source, Rachael has made these feelings clear to Matt. They said she's expressed how upset she is and thinks it's best they no longer speak. So just whoa is kind of what I have to say. I mean, that is such a putting it all out there, end of chapter, done deal kind of statement here. And obviously, I mean, again, I always like to throw this caveat out there. These are source quotes, right? I mean, this is someone who is speaking on behalf of Rachael. She did not post this on Instagram, so we're sort of speculating, taking this with a grain of salt. But the one thing that's standing out to me, Hiba, and I don't know, maybe I'm looking on the pessimistic side of things, but Rachael here is heartbroken, et cetera, because she really feels that they had a future together. And we're hearing various, degrees of reporting on they were FaceTiming a lot, they were in communication, they were trying to work things out, blah, 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 blah. But from what I saw, at least, and heard with my eyes, my ears, from Matt James, was that he was not looking for a relationship, that he could not be a part of her journey right now. What he was putting out there, again, this is publicly, right? Maybe there's a whole narrative that we didn't see behind the scenes, was that he wasn't going to be with her right now. So I'm just curious because clearly there's something we don't know, and clearly she's now hurt. So it feels like a messy situation is what we started with, and it's somehow just gotten messier and messier and messier. I mean, what do you make of this latest statement?
Oh, Fiona, you hit it right on the head. It just seems like this Grace person, ever since she entered the storyline of these three, or these two initially, it just seems like everything has just, derailed and just gone off. So it just seems like Rachael is just not trusting him anymore, doesn't know what his actual intentions are. Is there even a relationship to reconcile at this point? But again, like you said, for the After the Final Rose show, it seemed like this was going absolutely nowhere, and this actually came from Matt's mouth. Like, there was no other credible person to hear this from. So it's just very off-putting as to why now Rachael is surprised, like this isn't gonna work. But I just think Grace is kind of the person that's factoring into this relationship and really kind of putting a wrench into this. So I think it's mostly Rachael being frustrated with Grace now being in contact with Matt before he visited her in New York and whatnot. It's so hard to keep track of anymore. Like, they're all over the map. But I'm just thinking with Grace, ever since she entered the picture, it just seems like they're for real, like done for forever this time.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. It feels like, as like a spectator, right? Someone who's been trying their best to follow along, there's a missing link there. But what is clear is that Grace was the turning point. So we don't know, I think there was one source quote I read that they've been FaceTiming nonstop, right? Like, I have no way of knowing if that's real or not, but I do know that ever since this Grace person came forward, shared her part of the story, it feels as though these source quotes we've been getting are polar opposite to the statements that seem to be a pretty done deal that we were hearing, like you said, Hiba, after the Final Rose, and like in Matt's interviews. I think he did one with Good Morning America, some podcasts that followed. The party line was there was nothing to resolve. They weren't going to be in a relationship. There was nothing going on. Then we have that, again, missing piece. And now that Grace has entered the picture, we're kind of back to where we initially were, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, after the final rose, I was like, okay, that's it. They're done. They're over. They've broken up. It's a closed door. Then there was some chaos, and we're kind of right back there, right? But now I guess it's more of a Rachael is done than Matt is done. So messy, a little confusing. I'm with you. It's almost impossible, it feels like, at this moment to totally keep track and follow all of the steps. But right now, I think my gut feeling is if the door was cracked open, if behind the scenes they were exploring a little bit more than they were publicly giving off, I don't think we're going to see that door crack back open. It feels like he very publicly said he was done. Now she, even though it's a few weeks later, has very publicly said she's done. I think we're not going to be seeing them reuniting, let's just say, in New York in 2 weeks, right? I mean, do you kind of feel the same? It's a closed door for now.
Absolutely. I feel like they both each had their own say in the relationship, and they both each had their moment of saying and thinking, okay, this is not going to work. And I respect them for trying to give it another shot and try to reconcile and try to make it work. Because again, we always want these Bachelor people to fall in love. That's what we're rooting for. That's what we're here for. And unfortunately, it just didn't work out. There's this third party that's involved now that has derailed it even more. That has caused, more of a kind of rough patch of their reconciliation journey, if that was even an option, if that was even on the table. And it really seems like the cord has finally been cut between these two, and then it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. It's at the end of the day, I mean, you're so right. We met both of them because they were on a journey to find love, right? And it has been, unfortunately, kind of anything but that for the past few months. So I really am hopeful for both of them that they can get some peace, get some relaxation, and take some time to, find themselves, heal, and move on, because all of this has been playing out so publicly that I think it's a very smart next step, right? To just kind of hide out, take some time for you, and refocus. But only time will tell. Who knows what they're going to do next? We could see that reunion in New York in 2 weeks. With the way things go in Bachelor Nation, I honestly wouldn't be that shocked. So you guys, we will keep our eyes out. We want to know what you guys have thought of the Rachael and Matt journey, starting from after the final rose, because up until that point, it was a journey, and now I feel like we're on a whole new roller coaster. So let us know what you guys are making of these latest Rachael and Matt headlines, because we want to know what you guys think as well. Moving on, last but not least, we do have a fairly crazy revelation from our very own Peter Weber. I feel like just when I think I've had my last Peter moment, he hits us with something new. He just stopped by Us Weekly's Here for the Right Reasons podcast, and he revealed that he almost threw it all away, his entire Bachelor season, to run off into the sunset with Hannah Brown. So obviously, we saw Hannah twice during his season. The first was on limo night. So he explained that he knew something was up on limo night because there are all the limos, the whole process, the way it all goes. But then there was this one limo that nobody got out of, that just sat there for like 20 minutes, right? And nothing was happening. So he just knew through his, being a part of the show and knowing how producers work, that something big was coming. And obviously, you guys, this is Hannah who ended up getting out of it. He said, quote, "At first I was like, there's no way that's Hannah. There's no way." He thought it was a lookalike or something. He thought it was just a gorgeous girl. And then he saw her smile and realized that it could be none other than Hannah Brown. Kibba, this is the moment that Hannah returned to him the wings, the pilot wings that he gave to her, so that he could carry them with him, pass them along in his journey now as the Bachelor. It was a sweet moment. I remember at the time thinking, interesting that they've done this. Interesting that they've done it on limo night. But okay, this is really sweet. Do you remember this? What did you make of it when it happened?
I agree. It was a sweet moment too, and a good reason to kind of have her back on the show to, get more audiences to tune in. And I'm sure it made a great promo at the time, like, oh my gosh, Hannah's back. Like, what is she doing? But I think also he is so, I feel like, just head over heels about her regardless. Like, his season didn't even start yet. So of course Hannah's still maybe fresh on his mind still. So I think it would have made so much sense for him to feel that way, like in complete shock, like, what is she doing here? I thought I was trying to, move forward and move past her. And, this is my own season of The Bachelor. So I think he was really blindsided, of course. I mean, you saw the look on his face. Clearly, he wasn't acting. He didn't know anything about it. But I think it was just a funny moment. And it was nice on her part to, just kind of give up the wings and have him give it to someone that it might mean more to, someone he can actually foster a relationship with. But regardless of that, I just think, yeah, it was just a fun, innocent moment.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I remember thinking like, this is so crazy. I can't believe it. But like, I did really like that. I thought it was almost like a sweet moment of like closure at the time, of course, two of Bachelor Nation's faves, right? So very interesting. But then Hannah appeared again on his season. This time it was to host a date. And let's just say things took a turn. I'm sure you all remember this. They ended up having that very emotional conversation about having feelings for each other. And this was not as cute as the wings for me, right? It felt like, oh my God, how can he be doing this? He has all of these women who are here to like date him, marry him in the other room. Like, it was a hot mess. And Peter also talked about that experience. And I actually love this quote. He said, "I was an idiot. Producers probably hated me. But I literally and then he says, I think they edited this part out. So this is, you guys, the big reveal here. I was like, I'm going to leave the show. If you want to give this a shot, I will leave right now," he revealed on the podcast. He said that Hannah told him, "You can't do that, Peter. You're the Bachelor." And she reminded him that he signed a contract, and he reiterated, "No, I'll do it. What are they going to do to me?" He says, "I don't know what I was thinking that day. I was very confused." Reflecting on that moment, he says he thinks he may have been a little too impulsive. So,
you think?
Yeah. I mean, I'd say so. Can you imagine? I mean, they did edit that out, if my memory serves, and they leave in the juiciest, most dramatic stuff. They had to cut that moment because how could we even go on his journey with him as the Bachelor if he was willing to throw it all away for Hannah Brown? I mean, he just shocks me.
Shocks me every time. And again, that was not my favorite season at all whatsoever. I thought it was it was just, you guys know my thoughts about this. But I mean, he's the epitome of impulsive. He just wants to jump on anything that expresses interest in him. And especially when it's Hannah, of course he wants to go back to her because, again, those feelings are still fresh and new. And I'm sure at this point he still didn't really have any deep connections with any of the women. But it's just the definition of impulsive. And I think, yeah, if we had seen that part in the show, it would have turned off audiences even more. I mean, like, why even get a lead that doesn't even know what he wants and will jump at the idea of anything and everything? He was just such a bad pick. And oh my gosh, I don't have any more things to say about it. But yes, very, very impulsive.
Yes, I mean, you know my thoughts, Hiba. I am with you there. What a season. Obviously, this was a long time ago, all things considered. Mm-hmm. Peter, gushed about how happy he is for Hannah. He talked about how their lives, kind of separated. Like, we didn't see them pop up together on and off after Peter's season, right? They had this moment and that was kind of it. He is super happy for her now, says she's in an awesome relationship, and it makes him super happy to see her super happy. So all things considered, some crazy moments in their past, but a very mature viewpoint on things as of right now. You guys, we want to know what you think of this, because I know Peter's season, it's been a minute. But this is, to me, a fairly shocking revelation. And I just want to know what you guys think of the fact that he would have potentially walked out of there to run off into the sunset with Hannah Brown. So let us know in the chat, you guys. We are going to try to get to as many of your questions and your comments as we can. So if you haven't sent them in yet, now is the time. Anything Bachelor Nation related, hit us with it right now, and we will try to, like I said, get to as many of them as we can. Honestly, Hiba, this is the part of the show where I just feel like we honestly might learn something new because the viewers are so good at keeping up with all things Bachelor Nation. All right. Okay. First up from Nikki P. She says Matt James must be thrilled that Colton has taken over the Bachelor Nation headlines. You know what, Nikki? I think he probably is. I mean, let's face it, we're obsessed, so he didn't get off so easy in our live stream. We still have to talk about him for a minute there, but it's definitely been a what's the word I'm looking for? An interest shift, if you will.
Definitely a good distraction, and I'm sure Matt's happy some of the heat is finally off of him, maybe for like a couple days, and then it's gonna maybe go right back to him and Rachael. Eduardo says, I honestly believe that Matt was using Rachael and using the franchise for fame. Okay, now this is always a running theme whenever we talk about Bachelor leads or Bachelor contestants, and that is, are they genuinely in it for the love and for the relationships? But, we always have those black and white, some gray area contestants or leads where we really don't know their intentions. I mean, we've talked about it with Dale Moss, of course, him maybe using the whole franchise and his whole time on the show just for fame, just to, uplift his career and just get more fame. But with Matt, I don't think so. I think Matt just has the right intentions, but the way that he's going about it, it's not in the best way. It's not in the cleanest way. It just seems a little bit more messy, of course, with this third party person that's now Grace. So I don't think he's in it for the fame. It seems like he's very humble now. I mean, he deleted everything off of his socials as far as anything in affiliation with Bachelor. He took it off his bio, I believe, as well. And it just seems like he's really trying to disassociate it now. And I don't think I believe the fame part. Do you, Fiona?
No, I mean, obviously, everyone is entitled to their own opinion. There's no way for any of us to know for sure, but he just doesn't strike me as that. For me, for some reason, it always comes down to a gut feeling, and I really don't think that Matt went into this with ill intentions. I think he went into it thinking that it could, I think a lot of them go into it thinking it could be a great opportunity. But Matt, to me, seemed to, at every stage of the game, take how serious the relationships he was developing to the next level. He was very, very thoughtful, very vulnerable. And even at the very end, it felt like he wasn't willing to get engaged just for the sake of getting engaged on a TV show because he would have gotten that flashy headline ending, right? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, he wanted to really find his person, and he thought he found her, but he wanted to make sure in real life. So I don't know, that there's just something about how serious he seemed to take the romance side of the process that
Right.
makes me think he wasn't in it for the wrong reasons. Look,
And
all right, next up we have sorry, go ahead, Hiba.
Sorry, I just wanted to quickly add, also, I think as the first Black Bachelor, he had a lot of pressure on him as well. So I think if he came in
Right.
the intentions of, just wanting to get fame out of this, I think it would have been just such a bad look. So I think because he knew he had a lot of eyes on him at the time, this is, something that's being done for the first time in Bachelor history. I feel like he just did not want to mess with that whatsoever. And that's why I kind of got more of a genuine vibe from him.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I definitely agree. I got excited and cut you off because one of our faves, Dave Neal, he has his own channel, you guys. He is amazing. We actually did a mid-season review of Matt James's whole journey with Dave, and he was incredible. Go check that out if you haven't already. He says hey, and we say hey to you, Dave. We miss you here on Shared News. Would love to have you back. Send us in the chat when you want to come and talk all things Bachelor Nation, because honestly, so much has happened since the last time we spoke. It's like a new, it's a new adventure every day over here. So we've got a lot to talk about. All right, Hiba, I'm gonna let you take this one.
All right, Brandy says, as for all this Matt and Rachael stuff, I think if Matt is going to go back to Rachael, Chris Harrison should be able to come back. Okay, that's an interesting point. I do think it would be interesting if Matt and Rachael got back together, period. I think that's a whole separate conversation versus Chris Harrison coming back. But I do think that they also still go hand in hand a little bit. but it's also who has learned from their mistakes, who actually has grown and is showing that growth, because Rachael needed that growth and that knowledge, and so did Chris Harrison. So I don't think it's like an easy kind of like green light if Rachael gets it that Chris Harrison can automatically get it too and be brought back to the show. I think it really just depends on how much they've learned, if it's genuine things that they have learned and can finally implement in their lives and learn the lessons. I think that's really what it comes down to. Who's going to be the judge of that? I have no idea. But again, like we talked about previously, the chances of Matt and Rachael getting back together now, I think it's slim to none. So that might just rule out Chris Harrison in total. But again, with Chris Harrison returning, it's just really up to the producers at this point and how comfortable they feel. Because again, this franchise is going through so much rebranding that maybe Chris Harrison is gonna get phased out, you know? So it's just so hard to tell what's gonna happen and what can be expected in the future.
Yeah, Hiba, I couldn't agree with that more. I don't think that those two things are related. I think that Rachael Kirconnell didn't cause Chris Harrison to need to go on a journey, right? It was something that
Mm-hmm.
maybe awoke something and made something clear, but it's really commendable that they both have committed to doing the work, and I think that those journeys of doing the work are completely independent. So yeah,
Absolutely.
I am definitely with you there. All right, we have another one here from Amy E. She says, the saddest part of Colton coming out publicly is that he felt he needed to hide his true self so much so that he went on national television. Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm with you, Amy. I think that that's why his story, it can hopefully inspire some people, because what he had to go through to get to where he is right now, the internal battle, you know, Hiba, you touched on this, the mental health battle, all of the tolls that not having that self-acceptance, that self-love at certain phases of his life took for him. I think it is sad, and it hopefully, if any real good can come of this being so public, right? This isn't a journey he got to go on by himself. He had to go on it with millions of people, which adds another layer. Is that hopefully his story can inspire some people and touch some people and help other people get to a place where they're confident in themselves, they have a lot of self-love, and they're ready to unapologetically be who they are, because that's the best case scenario, right?
Mm-hmm. Definitely. All right, this next user, Jessica, says Matt needs to apologize to Rachael Kirkconnell. I would love to hear Jessica's reasoning as why Matt should apologize to Rachael. I don't know if this is in relation, I'm assuming it's in relation to the Grace situation. But again, I
Mm-hmm.
don't know how credible this Grace person is. I've been saying on this channel we need to get some screenshots, some actual evidence to show us that they were actually conversing with one another, they were meeting up, etc., because really it's her word against his, vice versa. And it's just interesting that Grace went on Reality Steve's podcast when she could have just reached out to Rachael and to let her know what was going on. So I think really without having all the information, it's so hard to say who should apologize to who. But yeah, this one's a tough one because we don't have all the information, but I can see how Matt would be at fault because, he kind of led us on and thought he was looking for a wife, but now he's just, kind of acting shady. So it's really hard to say.
Oh my gosh, it's this is honestly, we've talked a lot of messy things on Bachelor Nation, and this is just keeps, I said it earlier, getting messier and messier. It's like impossible to
Mm-hmm.
know where we stand on things. Oliver says Matt doesn't need to apologize to Rachael. He was single, and Rachael needs to accept that and move on. Oliver raises a great point too. I mean, it just, to me, what's so frustrating as like a fan who wants all the deets is, unless we were present on those FaceTimes, on those text threads, right? That actual receipts, those evidence you want, Hiba. It's hard to know, because publicly the party line that Matt portrayed was that he was not looking for a serious relationship. He was not looking to reconnect with Rachael, that he wished her the best, but that he was done. So either he was saying a completely different thing behind the scenes, then hung out with this Grace woman, and then really hurt Rachael, I'm not saying that there is no version of events that didn't happen and that Matt maybe, messed up, right? He did some stuff that was sort of shady that was not thoughtful. But we just don't know that. So right
Mm-hmm.
now, you can also look at it exactly the way Oliver is that Matt was single, he was willing to see her in New York to maybe have a conversation, hash some stuff out, get some closure, but he wasn't looking for a relationship just automatically
Mm-hmm.
because they hung out together. So I don't know. I'm left. This is like just like a head scratcher. I'm left a little confused. I don't know where we go from here. But I hope we get more info. I do because we want it.
You really can argue at both sides because, again, Matt is single. They aren't in a committed relationship. They're not even exclusive. He really doesn't owe her anything except maybe just a casual hangout, maybe to get closure. So, yes, a lot of gray area in that situation for sure. All right, this next user says Rachael Kirconnell for Paradise. This is interesting. I haven't even thought about that or conceptualized that. This would be interesting. I think maybe from Rachel's perspective, I don't know if she would want to get involved with another Bachelor spinoff so soon because, again, Bachelor in Paradise is scheduled for this summer. And maybe she, again, wants to take time to reflect on her relationship with Matt, what she wants, what she's looking for. I think from her perspective, this might be too soon. Again, I don't know the woman, so I can't really speak for her, but I'm just assuming based off like what we've seen publicly. But I think it might be a little too soon. What do you think, Fiona?
I totally agree. I think personally, obviously, let's take those source reports we talked about earlier with a grain of salt, but they're talking about how devastated she is right now. She hasn't moved on, healed from the Matt relationship, right? She's potentially starting that journey over right now. And then the flip side of that is we know she has a PR team at this point. She has to. And I don't think anyone would advise her that the best thing for her image right now is to go jump on a beach and try to
Right,
find love all over
exactly.
again, right? Because she very
Mm-hmm.
publicly sort of committed to taking some serious steps and going on a pretty serious journey. So I don't necessarily say Rachael Kirkconnell never for Paradise, but certainly this upcoming season, I would be beyond shocked. All right. Amy E says, as a member of the LGBTQS plus community, we welcome anyone, no matter how hard it may be, to fully disclose themselves. Amy, I absolutely think that is incredible, wonderful. I'm here for it. I definitely think that Colton is going to hopefully be feeling that sentiment after coming forward and sharing his story because it certainly was something that took courage, that's for sure.
This next user says, I do hope if Rachel C is looking for a committed relationship, she finds that with a new man. Remind me, who's Rachel C, Fiona?
I'm curious. I'm pretty sure Rachel C. Maybe they think Kirkconnell is with a C because I'm pretty sure he would be talking about Rachel Kirkconnell, but
Okay.
hopefully I'm getting that right.
Okay, well, if we're talking about Rachel Kirkconnell, I mean, of course, like we said, no matter who you are in Bachelor Nation and Bachelor franchise, Bachelor history, of course, the goal is for you to find love. That's why we watch you. That's what we root for. So no matter which way it comes at you, this love, this relationship, we hope you get it. So of course we want her to be happy and for her to most importantly learn from her mistakes and know why she is in this current position that she is in today. But yes, of course, we're always, for love. That's the biggest win of all.
Oh, absolutely. I couldn't have said it better. Mark says, thank you, Colton, for having the courage and strength to be true to yourself. God bless. From Toronto. Mark is watching from Toronto. Very cool. Yes, I that word courage I think is a really good way of putting it. At the end of the day, he's a public figure. It takes courage for anyone to come out on any scale. And obviously he, did this in phases. I know he mentioned coming out to his friends and family and loved ones, but the courage to share his story with the whole world and to hopefully allow his story to touch some other people out there, I think is really special. It's something that is commendable for sure. All right. Well, on that note, you guys, like I said, an eventful week so far in Bachelor Nation, but that is everything we have to share with you right now. Those are all the questions we have time to get to, but if we did not get to yours, have no fear. Leave it down for us in the comments and we will try to get to it on a future live. As always, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell because we're just getting started, you guys. There's going to be so much more in the coming days to discuss, so make sure you don't miss out on any of that. As always, I am your host, Fiona Zaring. I was joined by the wonderful Hibba Berry. If you want to come say hi, our social handles are on the screen right now. Thank you guys so much for tuning in live with us, and we'll see you next time. Bye.